It was a Sunday morning, August 28th, 2011, when Tropical Storm Irene announced its arrival with a steady downpour of rain. The forecast had called for high winds, but that wasn't the main impact the storm presented. Rather, it was the rain, 11 inches all told, that wreaked havoc across much of the state. The swath of destruction was large. The storm destroyed nearly $700 million in property, a figure that was equal to almost two-thirds of that year's state general fund budget. It damaged 200 bridges, 450 utility poles, 600 historic buildings, 1,000 culverts, 2,400 road segments, 3,500 homes, and 20,000 acres of farmland. Locally, a lot of the damage took place to roads and places around Manchester, Arlington, and East Dorset. In Sunderland, Kelly Stand Road was washed out and closed for quite a while afterwards. In Arlington, the rec park flooded. Route 7A was closed in a couple of places. Rooteville and Richville roads in Manchester and the area around the Chanticleer restaurant in East Dorset were also places where extensive flooding occurred. And worse, of course, it took the lives of 7 Vermonters. With the 10th anniversary of the storm now just behind us, we talked with 3 local leaders who were at the forefront of coping with the storm and its aftermath. We started with John O'Keefe, who then as now was the town manager of Manchester and pulled together a response team to manage the event.
You know, I guess the reflection on that is actually I felt like we were looking at the storm as a real potential threat. It was also the first time that we had activated our emergency operations center, albeit, you know, we have a fancy new one that's a sort of a state-of-the-art separate room. We were in the corner of the fire department breakfast room, and it was really tough. We were using the emergency operations center to sort of break down all the damage that was happening, and it was a critical decision. But on the other side of the room were people coming in and out of the emergency. You know, people had just evacuated Billy Brownlee and his family in the bucket of an excavator. They were all geared up and all excited about the emergency. And then over here was this group of people that were supposed to think things through. And it was kind of a clash of, you know, people that were supposed to really stay focused and think things through. And then the people over here that were actually doing all the work. And it didn't work very well. It worked fine. The one thing about the Emergency Operations Center was that was the one that actually, that group, which was Jim Baker, Mike Hall, me, Lee Crone, we had figured out that the town's water system had gotten compromised really quickly by analyzing all the data that was coming into us. And that's when we put as you remember, we had a water boil order that we put in place very, very quickly. And I think that was probably the first big success of the Emergency Operations Center, was the fact that we were able to figure that out early on.
Then we met up with Philip Grubb Bourne, who was the chief of the Manchester Fire Department at the time, and asked him what his main memories of the storm were.
Well, we decided John O'Keefe and Jim Baker was the intern chief and Mike Hall. We decided to meet here on that Sunday morning at like 10 o'clock. And things didn't look well, so I took a ride over here, and I was here like at 8 o'clock, and dispatch called me and said, water's rising on Bourne Brook. So I took a ride down there, and I drive up the first entrance to Valley Pass up towards Debbie Hayes' house. And all of a sudden, the river breaches the bank, and I'm looking at a wall of water coming straight at me down the Valley Pass Road. I throw it in reverse. I back out of there. The rocks are banging on the bottom of the truck. I'm going, wow. I get out into Richville Road, pull up, and it was just a wall of water coming down Bourne Brook. And I got on the radio and said, you know, tone everybody out. And it was like all hell just broke loose all at once. And the funny part is it wasn't really raining down here. It was like, you know, not raining hard. And we got back here, and then of course, the water was all coming down into the valley, and then it breached it up behind Wallace Computer and went down behind there, and it broke the water main down behind Wallace Computer, which was I think 12-inch water main. And when it broke that, it emptied the water tank up on the East Mountain. And we didn't understand where all the water was coming. Well, it bored a hole right through Hayes's pit. And then it plugged the culvert up on Rootville Road. And so all the water was coming down Rootville Road. And in front of Joan Rizzio's house, it was probably 15 feet deep, and it took the water main out up there also. And all the water was out of the water tower. And it was just, it happened so fast. And it was raining on the mountains. And of course, we live in a valley, and all the rain came from the mountains down. And when it hit here in the valley, it washed out Richville Road. It just took, parts of the road out everywhere. Everybody stepped up to the plate. We had Dorset's trucks down here because Dorset didn't get hit as bad. East Dorset did. But everybody, and we had many meetings afterwards to kind of brainstorm what we'd do again and get everybody on board if we needed help, or Dorset needs help, East Dorset, Arlington, and got everybody on board if it happened again. This last storm was close, but it wasn't half as bad as Irene was.
Afterwards, we met up with Keith Squires of Arlington, who was the chairman of the Arlington Select Board then, and asked him to reflect back on the events of that time.
Yeah, I think the first thing was driving over here and the water was over top of the fences around the ball field. I think that was the first impression that we got a problem. And then it sort of went from there. I think everybody kind of found out about it about the same time, and we just started. We had the highway crew in and started assessing what needed to be done, and obviously the park was simply a wait for the water to go down thing. So the roads and bridges became the priority, and that's where we went. All the bridges were very well washed out on 313, and that was the priority, was to get those back together. So that's what we worked on for the next few days. I think when we were down at the other end of the park on 313, and the water was up high enough so it was starting to rattle that bridge on State 313, that's when I started to think that, this is going to be bad, no question about it. And we sort of went from there, closed the bridge down and stopped traffic, and that was probably when it really hit me that we were in trouble. We looked at the bridges on 313, and the last bridge down, the Holly Bridge, was the one that had the least damage, and that's where we started in order so we could get traffic back across over onto the other side. The Woodard Bridge was still passable with a car, so we let people go back and forth on that for a day and a half, and then got Holly Bridge temporarily fixed up, and then came up and started working on River Road on this end to get the rest of the bridges open.
Tropical Storm Irene remains the biggest and most damaging storm to have hit our area over the past decade, but with growing evidence that climate change may prompt more frequent and more intense storms and unpredictable weather, it may be the sort of experience we might see again. Improvements like better culverts might seem unsensational, but likely will seem well worth it. For the GNAT-TV News Project, I'm Andrew McKeever.